This is CBS 4 News at noon.
First at noon, Hurricane Laura slams into the Gulf Coast overnight. Dangerous and now deadly Category 4 hurricane. Here's what the storm looked like overnight in Lake Charles, Louisiana. You can see the wind whipping as the rain pours down on top of this parking garage. And here's video out of Cameron in southwest Louisiana, where Laura made landfall, bringing with it punishing rain pouring down as the wind blew. But right now, Laura is making its way towards the Arkansas border and losing much of its strength. The storm currently a Category 1 hurricane. We begin our CBS 4 News live team coverage with CBS 4's Courtney Zabowski, who is live in Galveston, Texas, where the recovery efforts are just beginning. Courtney.
Good afternoon, Maribel. Well, Galveston did not take a direct hit, but we are seeing some water in neighborhoods. Water from the bay came out of its banks and into this neighborhood and into a nearby restaurant. But this is nothing like what we're seeing in Louisiana. Hurricane Laura ripped buildings to shreds as it slammed ashore overnight in Louisiana, not far from the Texas border.
Time to take cover, time to take cover.
The powerful storm packed sustained winds of 150 miles an hour.
There it goes.
Flipping over an RV and dumping over 10 inches of rain in some places. In Lake Charles, Louisiana, debris is scattered everywhere. Property damage is extensive. That's where Jeannie Adair rode out the storm.
I've never experienced one this intense. They say this is going to be the storm of a lifetime, and I can see that it's probably, that's an accurate statement for sure.
Forecasters predicted a massive, unsurvivable storm surge that could flood people as far as 40 miles inland. But early reports reveal it may not have been as bad as expected.
It's probably less than 10 feet right now, which is a good sign. But again, we're also hearing heavy wind damage to structures.
As Laura trucks north, inspectors here in Texas and Louisiana will head out to assess the damage. Hundreds of thousands have lost power.
Rescue teams are involved right now, making sure that they're restoring power, restoring and protecting lives. And we are already going to begin the rebuilding process.
Authorities caution the storm is still a threat. They say it could be days before power is fully restored and all the floodwater recedes. And we are now hearing about the first fatality, a 14-year-old girl who was in a home with her parents in southwest Louisiana. She died when a tree hit her home. And Maribel, first responders don't believe that this will be the only fatality.
Just devastating, Courtney. Thank you so much for that live report. Now let's take our coverage over to CBS 4 meteorologist Lisette Gonzalez with the latest update on Laura. Lisette.
Oh, yeah, that's just heartbreaking to hear. And, you know, this is just such a powerful and dangerous hurricane making landfall around 2 a.m. as a Category 4 with, max sustained winds of 150 miles an hour. So we are seeing that thankfully it has weakened now that it's moving inland, but it's still a Category 1 as of the noon update and max sustained winds of 75 miles an hour. It is about 50 miles east-southeast of Shreveport, Louisiana, moving north at 15 miles an hour, expected to move across Arkansas overnight tonight, and then eventually it'll be over the mid-Mississippi Valley as it's going to be moving towards the northeast and becoming a depression, and then further weakening expected, a remnant area of low pressure here off the mid-Atlantic, northeast New England coastline as we head into the weekend. But there is the infrared satellite image, and really just a monster of a hurricane overnight, especially and throughout the morning hours. I can't imagine how frightening it must have been for the folks here along the northwest Gulf Coast. But now we're seeing that eye wall has filled, and now we're still dealing with those very strong rain bands and the potential for hurricane conditions and storm surge across Louisiana and parts of Texas. Here's the current radar, and some of our highest wind gusts, of course, have been in Louisiana, especially for places like Shreveport, a wind gust of 51 miles an hour, in Tallulah about 40 mile per hour gusts, 30 mile per hour gusts in New Orleans, and conditions should gradually improve for Louisiana later today, but then Arkansas is going to get hit, and then it moves northeast. So we'll have more on this and our local forecast in a few minutes.
All right, Lisa, thank you. Members of Miami Fire Rescue are ready to deploy to the hardest hit areas if needed. They're also joined by several members of Broward County Fire Rescue. The crews have yet to be activated to respond to Hurricane Laura, but the teams have their trucks loaded up with equipment and are ready to go if needed. Opa-locka police are searching for a suspect who shot and killed a man in an apparent road rage shooting. They say the victim was driving along Northwest 135th Street when he was shot after arguing with another driver. He drove himself to Amelia Earhart Park in Hialeah, where he eventually was airlifted to the hospital.
We definitely urge drivers to not indulge in any type of dispute or any hostility with another driver, because at the end of the day, road rage is serious and you never know what it may lead to.
Police say the victim was shot in the arm and later died at Jackson Memorial Hospital. Officers believe the shooter may be an Uber driver. Now to the coronavirus road to reopening. Miami-Dade Public Schools will begin virtual learning on Monday, but there are some concerns they may not be ready. The My School online system is new for all involved and will be far more structured than what students, teachers, and parents experienced back in the spring. Teachers are trying to learn the new system as quickly as possible, but some within the school board feel that they are completely ready.
Has there been adequate training? Absolutely not. There's not adequate training for a new system in the fourth largest district in the nation facing a pandemic.
Superintendent Alberto Carvalho says he will determine if schools can open up October 5th by September 30th. If schools do open, it will be done in stages and only for the parents who would like to send their children back. The state of Florida has passed another grim milestone. More than 11,000 people have now died from the coronavirus since the start of the pandemic. The threshold crossed following a reported increase of 139 deaths. The State Department of Health also reports more than 3,200 new cases of coronavirus. Miami-Dade reports more than 600 cases and 29 deaths today. Broward's 264 cases and 9 deaths. There were 4 cases and no deaths reported today in Monroe County. And happening today, the U.S. Coast Guard is offloading nearly 30,000 pounds of seized illegal drugs. All of that combined worth a street value of nearly $230 million. CBS 4's Brooke Schaefer is live at Port Everglades with how all of this was stopped. Brooke.
Hey, Maribel, good afternoon. The Coast Guard really describing this as a life-saving effort, intercepting hundreds of millions of dollars worth of drugs before they could potentially hit the streets of South Florida. Chopper 4 Thursday morning flying over the Cutter Hamilton at Port Everglades. On board, dozens of pallets of seized drugs.
Where the Coast Guard Cutter Hamilton is delivering more than 14 tons of drugs valued at $228 million.
Thursday morning's offload included 17,000 pounds of marijuana and more than 11,000 pounds of cocaine.
Every kilogram of cocaine, every pound of marijuana you see here today represents a life saved, a crime prevented, and a loss of revenue for the drug cartels.
The Coast Guard crew on board the Cutter Hamilton worked with the U.S. Navy, Air Force, and U.S. Customs and Border Protection to stop the more than 28,000 pounds of drugs before they could make their way to the U.S. These plastic bags filled with cocaine and marijuana, a result of multiple Eastern Pacific and Caribbean Sea interdictions.
The drugs and interdictions you see here today were all interdicted in the Eastern Pacific Ocean, leaving from the west coast of South America, heading towards the western side of the Central American Isthmus.
When it comes to disrupting drug cartels, the Coast Guard is a vital member of our team.
The Coast Guard praising that teamwork in stopping these drugs before they could potentially hit the streets of South Florida.
These drugs will not be adding to the devastating effects of drug-related crime and deaths.
So in total, we're told 28 people were detained. They now face a range of charges, including drug trafficking. I'm live outside Port Everglades. Brooke Schaefer, CBS 4 News.
Brooke, thank you. And still ahead on CBS 4 News at noon, tonight's the final night of the Republican National Convention. President Trump slated to accept his nomination for re-election. Will Hurricane Laura change plans for his big night? Plastic pollution turned into brand new pieces of jewelry. The local business cleaning up our oceans up next in Miami Proud. Now to Campaign 2020. The Republican National Convention wraps up tonight with President Trump officially accepting his nomination for re-election. Day 3 of the virtual convention focused on law and order and had speeches by many in his cabinet. Vice President Mike Pence praised President Trump and strongly criticized his Democratic opponent, Joe Biden. CBS 4's Skylar Henry has the latest from Washington.
You won't be safe in Joe Biden's America.
Amid ongoing protests for racial justice, Vice President Pence argued the nation would be less safe with Joe Biden as president and better off with 4 more years of President Trump.
Too many heroes have died defending our freedom to see Americans strike each other down. We will have law and order on the streets of this country.
The vice president also defended the president's response to the coronavirus pandemic on the 3rd night of the Republican National Convention, as other speakers reached out to female voters.
I have a 9-month-old daughter. She's a beautiful, sweet little girl. And I choose to work for this president for her.
A woman in a leadership role can still seem novel. Not so for President Trump.
Tonight's lineup includes top GOP lawmakers in both the House and the Senate, as well as the president's daughter.